My friends, mistakes are not failures. They are not signs that you are unworthy, incapable, or stuck. They are lessons, stepping stones on the path of growth, designed to teach you something valuable. But too often we misunderstand them. We allow them to define us, to weigh us down, to make us feel as if we are somehow broken. The truth is, you were never meant to go through life without stumbling. No one is. Think about a child learning to walk. They take a step, they fall. They try again, they fall again. But never once do they stop and say, maybe walking isn't for me. They don't sit down in frustration and decide they are failures. They get up, they keep going, and before they know it, they are running. Yet somewhere along the way, as we grow older, we start believing that mistakes are something to be ashamed of. We start fearing them, avoiding them, and even punishing ourselves for making them. But what if we saw mistakes the way a child does, not as an end point, but as part of the process? You see, every mistake carries within it a hidden lesson. When something doesn't go as planned, it's life redirecting you, showing you something you needed to learn. Maybe you trusted the wrong person, and now you understand the importance of discernment. Maybe you failed at something only to realize that your real passion lies elsewhere. Maybe you spoke out of anger and hurt someone, and now you understand the value of patience and kindness. The mistake itself is never the problem. It's what we do with it that matters. But here's what happens. Instead of learning, we dwell. We replay our mistakes over and over in our minds, carrying them like a burden we refuse to put down. We judge ourselves harshly, sometimes more than anyone else ever would, and the more we do this, the heavier it becomes. But I want you to imagine something for a moment. Imagine holding a glass of water. If you hold it for a few seconds, it's light. But what if you hold it for an hour, a day, a week? It doesn't matter how small the glass is. The longer you hold it, the heavier it feels. That's what happens when we hold on to our mistakes. They grow heavier. Not because they have more power, but because we refuse to let them go. So how do we change this? How do we learn instead of carrying regret? First, we accept. We acknowledge that mistakes are not only inevitable, but necessary. The most successful people in the world are not the ones who never made mistakes. They are the ones who learn from them and move forward. Thomas Edison failed thousands of times before inventing the light bulb, but he never saw those failures as mistakes. He saw them as lessons, as progress. He once said, I have not failed. I've just found 1,0,0,0,0 ways that won't work. What if we adopted that mindset? Second, we reflect. So today I ask you, what mistake are you still holding on to? What weight have you been carrying that you no longer need? Whatever it is, take a deep breath, let it go, and trust that every misstep, every setback, every wrong turn is simply guiding you to where you are meant to be. My friends, you are not defined by your past mistakes. You are not the wrong choices you made, the moments of weakness, or the times when you didn't know better. Too often we let our mistakes become our identity. We replay them in our minds, labeling ourselves as failures, as unworthy, as incapable. But a single mistake, or even a series of them, does not determine who you are. What defines you is what you do next, how you choose to rise, to learn, and to grow. Think about a book. If you read one bad chapter, does it mean the entire story is ruined? Of course not. You turn the page, you move forward, and the story continues. Your life is the same. One mistake is just a single chapter. It is not the whole book. But the problem is we often stop reading. We get stuck in that one chapter, convincing ourselves that it is all we will ever be. We forget that we have the power to write the next part differently. Every person you admire, every successful individual has made mistakes. The difference is they didn't let those mistakes define them. They used them as lessons, as stepping stones to something greater. Oprah Winfrey was fired from her first television job. Steve Jobs was removed from his own company. J.K. Rowling was rejected multiple times before her books changed the world. If they had believed their failures were the final word on their abilities, they would have never moved forward. But they did, and so can you. You see, the problem is not the mistake itself, it's the story we tell ourselves about it. When we make a mistake, we don't just acknowledge it, we attach meaning to it. I failed, so I must not be good enough. I made a wrong decision, so I must be incapable. I hurt someone, so I must be a bad person. But these are just thoughts, not truths. A mistake is simply an event. It does not define your worth, your intelligence, or your potential. It is something you did, not something you are, but I understand why it's hard. We live in a world that often judges people by their worst moments. Society can be unforgiving, quick to label, quick to criticize. But here's the thing, you do not have to accept the labels the world gives you. You do not have to be the... So today I ask you, what mistake have you been allowing to define you? What story have you been telling yourself that is keeping you from growing? Whatever it is time to let it go. You are not your past. You are not your worst moment. You are the person who has the power to learn, to change, and to write a new chapter. One that is filled with growth, strength, and possibility. My friends, every setback you have faced, every failure, every disappointment, it wasn't the end. It was a redirection. Life is always guiding you, even when you don't realize it. Sometimes what feels like the worst moment is actually the beginning of something far greater. But to see it, you must be willing to trust that there is a purpose behind every detour, every closed door, and every so-called mistake. Think about a time when you wanted something so badly, but it didn't work out. Maybe it was a job you didn't get, a relationship that ended, or a dream that seemed to slip through your fingers. At that moment it felt like a loss, but now looking back, can you see how it led you to something better? Can you see how it shaped you, how it brought you to where you are today? Life has a way of taking us exactly where we need to be, even if we don't understand it at the time. But here's where many people get stuck. They resist the redirection. They cling to what could have been, replaying the past, wishing things had gone differently. They see a failure as a dead end instead of what it really is, a new path, and because of that, they stop moving forward. They let one disappointment define their future instead of embracing the possibility that something better is ahead. Imagine you're driving to a destination and suddenly the road ahead is blocked. You have two choices. You can sit there frustrated, refusing to move because this was the way you planned to go, or you can take a new route, trusting that you will still get where you need to be. That is how life works. A rejection, a failure, a closed door is not stopping you, it's guiding you. It's life saying, not this way, but there is another way. Think of all the great successes that came from setbacks. Walt Disney was fired from a newspaper for lacking imagination. If he had believed that, ignored. Maybe it's pushing you towards something greater. Whatever the lesson, take it. Carry the wisdom, not the regret. And understand this, mistakes do not lessen your worth. They do not define you. They are simply moments, not permanent labels. You are not the person you were when you made that mistake. You have grown, you have changed, and you deserve to give yourself the same grace that you would give to someone else in your position. So today I ask you, what regret are you still holding on to? What mistake are you allowing to weigh you down? Whatever it is, take a deep breath, release it, and choose to step forward, because the past cannot be changed, but the future is still yours to shape. My friends, the way you see your mistakes determines the way you live your life. If you see them as proof of failure, you will carry regret. If you see them as opportunities for growth, you will move forward with wisdom. The shift in mindset is everything. It is the difference between staying stuck in the past and embracing the future with confidence. Too often we let our mistakes become a source of shame. We replay them in our minds, thinking about what we should have done differently. We let them define us, telling ourselves stories like, I always mess up, I'm not good enough, or I'll never get it right. But these are just thoughts, not destination than the one you originally planned. Life has a way of using even our mistakes to guide us towards something greater. But we have to be willing to see it. This is why shifting your mindset is so important. Instead of saying, I shouldn't have made that mistake, say, what is this teaching me? Instead of thinking, I failed, remind yourself, I've learned. This simple shift changes everything. It turns regret into wisdom. It turns setbacks into stepping stones. It turns the past into a lesson rather than a burden. And here's the truth. No one else is keeping track of your mistakes the way you are. People are too busy thinking about their own lives to dwell on yours. The only person holding you back is you. The only thing keeping you from moving forward is the story you are telling yourself about your past. Change that story and you change your life. So today I ask you, what if you let go of the fear of making mistakes? What if you embraced them as necessary parts of your journey? What if you saw every misstep as a lesson, every failure as a step towards success? If you can shift your mindset, you can shift your entire life, because mistakes are not the end, they are the beginning of something greater. My friends, life is always moving forward whether we choose to move with it or not. And yet, so many of us stay stuck, holding on to the weight of past mistakes, replaying them in our minds, carrying the burden of what we cannot change. But there comes a moment when you must decide, will you let your past define you, or will you take the wisdom from it and step into something new? Mistakes are inevitable. No one walks through life without taking a wrong turn, saying the wrong thing, or making a choice they later regret. But those mistakes do not have to be your prison. They do not have to keep you from becoming who you are meant to be. The past is already written, but the future is still in your hands. And the only way to move forward is to let go to the lessons. They let go of regret and they moved forward. And because of that, they changed history. You see, the problem is never the mistake itself. The problem is the way we hold on to it, the way we let it shape our identity, the way we let it stop us from taking the next step. But what if, instead of seeing mistakes as something to regret, we saw them as signs of progress? What if we recognized that every mistake means we were trying, we were growing, we were stepping outside our comfort zones, because the only real failure is refusing to move forward. And I know, letting go isn't always easy. Sometimes the past feels like a weight too heavy to put down. But I want you to imagine something. Imagine carrying a backpack filled with stones. Each stone represents a mistake, a regret, something you wish you had done differently. Now imagine carrying that backpack for days, for months, for years. The weight doesn't lessen, it only grows heavier. But at any moment you have the power to take it off, to set it down, to walk forward without it. The past is the same way. The weight you are carrying is not something you have to hold on to. You have the power to release it. So what do? First, you forgive yourself. You recognize that you did the best you could with what you knew at the time. Second, you take the lesson. Every mistake carries wisdom. Find it, learn from it, and use it to make better choices moving forward. And finally, you embrace what's ahead, because life is not happening in the past, it is happening now. And every second you spend dwelling on what has already happened is a second you miss out on what could be. So today, I ask you, what are you still holding on to?